Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Season 12, Episode 35, overall 640 of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership, located at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out their website, barrycullen.com, for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, along with their great selection of all-electric vehicles and Cadillac vehicles as well. You can call the dealership at 519-824-0210 and tell them Chris Palme sent you, or you can email them at info@barrycullen.com. Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership has been family-run and operated here in the city of Guelph since 1969. Good evening from chilly southern Ontario, where it's about minus 15 today. And on this, I can't believe it's already Tuesday, December 30th, 2025. This is my second last show of 2025. And I'm really looking forward to my guest tonight. Her name is Sonya Gandhi. She is a therapist and the podcast host of her own show called When Rose-Colored Glasses Come Off as well. And we're going to bring on Sonya right now. Good evening, Sonya. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing okay. I can't believe it's already December 30th. The holiday season's just flying by.
I know. We're heading into the new year.
So did you have a good holiday season with your family and your two dogs?
Yeah, no, I had a nice calm holiday, which was very good considering the rest of the year is hustle and bustle.
Congratulations on also being a podcast host of your own show. Can you tell our audience a little bit about your podcast show and how did you come about it?
Sure. So the podcast is called When the Rose-Colored Glasses Come Off. And it really is a focus on narcissistic abuse is the focus of the show. So it's when people realize that they are in toxic relationships and realize that they might actually be in a relationship that is not just maybe physically abusive, but emotionally abusive. And emotional abuse is not as recognized in many systems as physical abuse is. It's the unseen trauma or the unseen abuse. So I fell into that a number of years ago. I myself have experienced that kind of trauma. And so it comes from a place of personal journey of healing, as well as I started to work with clients who are having those same struggles, various sort of areas of their life. But it's a really difficult area for people to deal with. So I thought, it's time to get my voice out there, share, and try and help wherever I can. So that's sort of how the podcast came to be.
How often do you record an episode, and do you occasionally have guests come on your show as well?
Yeah, so I try to do every week. Life sometimes gets crazy busy, as you probably know, but I try to keep it paced for once a week. And I have had a few guests. Now, the nature of my business, of course, as being a therapist, confidentiality is a big piece of that. So I've had 2 clients come on last year. We had to change their names and they couldn't be on camera. I did post it on YouTube, but they were not on camera just for their own privacy reasons. So from time to time, if I have, a guest, whether it's a client who wants to come on or more so even other therapists who may not know enough about narcissism, or we talk about certain approaches and so on in therapy, that's sort of where I'm headed in terms of a lot of different services that can help my client group or other sectors. Like I have another therapist who works around cheating spouses, which is very common in a narcissistic relationship. So there's some, overlap or intersect.
Sonya, where is your show available? Where can people tune into it on platforms? And how many episodes have you recorded so far?
Okay, so I'm going to say Apple, Spotify, I think all of the major podcast channels. And I think I recorded about 20, I'm going to say. I took about an 8-month gap for a period. I was trying to get other sort of social media, YouTube and all that going. So took a break because I was kind of regrouping and remarketing, if I can call it that. But I think I've got out about 8 new podcasts in the last few weeks.
Congratulations. And how did you come about branding it and getting the name of it for your show?
Yeah, so the name sort of happened authentically just in sessions as I talk to a lot of my clients. I like to use a lot of examples because I find different people learn differently in terms of experiential listening, reading, doing journaling, all of that. And I think I'm the master of making up all kinds of or experiential things. And I said, when the rose-colored glasses come off, and I found myself repeating that, but it just really alludes to or speaks to sort of that awakening, I'm going to call it, of when people actually realize that they're in a relationship that is toxic. And I find actually during Christmas, since I was talking to a colleague about this as well as a client, where narcissists during the Christmas holidays really make life hell. So for a lot of us, Christmas can be joyous and it can be family, but for people who are in these emotionally abusive relationships, Christmas can get ruined very quickly. So that's sort of how the name came about. And I apologize, I forgot your other question, the branding.
Yes.
So my daughter is a graphic designer. So I asked her to come up with the concept. I said, make me a thumbnail for a podcast. And so she gave me 2 or 3 different options. And this is the one that I like. I like colors. So this one kind of popped off for me for my podcast.
I'm actually looking for a graphic designer because as many tools I do, Sonya, graphics, I don't have the patience and the skills for it. So maybe I'll reach out to your daughter because I would like to get a thumbnail for this show as well.
Yeah, no, she loves doing that kind of stuff. She's very, very good at what she does. So yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. How would you describe yourself as a podcast host?
Oh, wow. I would say that when I am not on camera, I am pretty confident. And I think it's taken me years to get here. I think as a therapist, as I became more comfortable with talking and sharing with clients, and really, clients kind of look to a therapist to say, am I on the right track? Am I going crazy? Is this, too much to ask? Like, I found I was more of a mentor. And I think through that process, it really helped me become more confident. And so as a podcast host, I feel so much more confident because I know there's people out there listening who are looking for information, who are looking for somebody to validate or acknowledge some of their experiences, which they may not have spoken out loud, right? They may be doing research online about relationships and marriage and what's kind of normal. And often, and I had a client today just tell me, somebody used the word narcissist. I started looking it up. I saw something on TikTok and it clicked for me. And then she goes, and I have a lot of clients who start looking on social media and looking up these terms. And so it's really an area that is becoming more common. The word is used, so it's thrown around. Narcissism, toxic is another word that's thrown around. And so it's becoming more, I'm going to say, common, although not everybody's a narcissist, right? You've got people who might be arrogant, who may not have as much of a soft touch or be empathic, but there is a sense of empathy. And with narcissism, there is no remorse, there's no empathy. And that is hard for people to wrap their head around. And so the podcast really allows me to share some of the normalizing that their experience is real, because a lot of my clients feel that they're crazy, that somehow this is not real, that everything is okay, and that they're the ones to blame. Their worth is really called into question, or they doubt themselves so much. So the podcast really helps to, I'm hoping, calm people down in that, oh, I'm not alone. Other people are using the same kind of language. Oh, okay, maybe this is a thing. And I think it helps them feel part of a bigger group, where sometimes I think people feel very much alone.
Sonya, being a therapist for over 25 years, things have changed over the two decades. I wanted to get your opinion. Do you find empathy has shrunk and communication skills as well has shrunk? And also the stereotypes. Is there still stereotypes about, hey, if you go see a therapist or you're shrink, you're crazy? Is that still going on these days?
Yeah, I'll speak to the online sort of world right now. We've become a culture of instant gratification. And so, therapists like me, we go on TikTok and Instagram and you're trying to give some pearls of wisdom, but it's information, but it can't be applied to a person. It can help them realize that they might be struggling with some issues, but it's become so quick, right? People are looking for that 30-second grab. I think the other real big danger is ChatGPT. People are using that for their therapy. And, there's been some cases out of the States where kids have committed suicide because ChatGPT told them to, because they had started to communicate with this bot that was showing empathy or expressing empathy through words. And it escalated to a point where finally ChatGPT threw out, do you want to know how to kill yourself? So it's a really scary thing. And I have so many people say, I had to plug it into ChatGPT to tell me that I'm not crazy, that what my husband did was wrong. So they're looking for validation through these, very smart AI tools, but they can't be used as therapists. And I have a lot of people who look up information and expect some kind of a response. So there's a real danger in how and what ChatGPT can be used for, or even these other AIs. So I'm a bit worried about that. But social media has become, it's exploded in terms of information. So to your point around therapy, is there a stereotype? I think that it's changing, but it's slow to change. Mental health is still, as much as we've tried to destigmatize it. Most of my clients are women. I'm not saying that men don't come. I have some amazing, insightful male clients who are so thankful that they went to therapy, because they've now been able to communicate differently. They've been able to ask questions. They've been able to do things that they probably weren't taught. As generations go, communication is being lost. We're doing things by text where I'm the pickup, let's talk on the phone if we can. Text is great for those quick messages, but I don't want to be having a deep conversation. And now you hear this breakup culture on text or through many of these messaging apps. It's not personal anymore. And so when you asked about empathy, I think that it's really hard to show empathy on text. I think you can use words, but we also know text can be misconstrued. And so sometimes we're using the social media and other platforms to express ourselves because we don't have the courage to say something to somebody. We don't want to get into conflict. We don't want to challenge people. We don't want to say difficult things. So text has become a way that we do that. So communication has definitely broken down. And so, I do a lot of couples work, and it's, okay, let's go back to basics around how do we communicate with each other? Let's ask questions instead of making accusations. Instead of getting defensive, how about we say, wait, what do you mean? Like, there is just even the nuance of the basic communication that I think is getting lost. So, I think there is stereotype with therapy, but therapy is just really a conversation with somebody neutral who has some education that can help you dig into things like childhood trauma, right? We all have it for the most part. I think nobody's free of childhood trauma, but most people deny that they have it or that it wasn't that bad. We really normalize things. And I'm 58. There was no such thing as mental health in my growing up years. And so now it's like people are unraveling things, and the big common symptoms are anxiety and depression. Well, that comes from somewhere. It doesn't come out of the blue. And often as we dig in, we find out other things that really, people are not expressing sadness. They push it down. It's considered weak. And so, in therapy, it's really about normalizing. We're human. We have the whole gamut of emotions. We can express them. It doesn't have to be out in the public realm. We don't have to cry on Instagram. We can do that in our privacy of our own home, but we become our worst critic and we judge ourselves for some of those feelings.
Sonya, do you find mental health issues have increased during the pandemic and after the pandemic, and also with the high cost of living and everything going on in the world right now?
Yeah. I think that, we are social creatures as human beings. And during the pandemic, being completely shut down, I think for a lot of people, who had kids who had to be schooled online, there is no recess, no lunch, no ability to socially interact. And I've got a couple of clients whose kids who started in JK during the pandemic, who don't have the same interactions with kids now that they're in grade 2. They're nervous, they're anxious, they don't know how to engage. So, I mean, I certainly think that the pandemic, it threw everybody. I mean, we were standing outside in the cold in winter time with masks on just to interact with people because we need that social engagement. So I think that people started to isolate. It became easy, right? So therapy online. I never did therapy online prior to the pandemic. We were in person. And then we've got now, and it's so much more accessible to do it online, but I certainly like to do it in person. There's such a human interaction that happens during a session in person versus on video. And again, I can also service people in Northern Ontario if I want to. So certainly accessibility has improved. But we're also now in a recession where I'm finding, and I think a lot of therapists are, there's been a decline. And it's because of finances, right? We're in a recession. People are losing their jobs. They don't have benefit coverage. A lot of my clients have benefit coverage so they can come. So some are paying out of pocket, but then they can't come consistently because they can't afford it. So, I mean, the state of, the current situation, mental health stigma aside, even just access right now is really difficult for clients.
Sonya, are you able to talk to our audience about the different types of therapists and maybe explain a little bit differences between a therapist and a psychiatrist, aka shrink?
Sure. So a psychiatrist is actually a doctor. They've gone through med school. They've done the residency. They've done, again, I'm not going to assume, but presumably the things that most doctors go through, residency, they probably do choose their stream, which is mental health psychiatry. They can prescribe medication. That's a psychiatrist. A psychologist, they go through psychology degree, psychology master's, PhD. They go to various levels, but they can't prescribe medication, but they do therapy as well as a psychologist. And then you have social workers. So I'm a social worker, so I got a social work degree. And then there are psychotherapists. So that's a different degree that's specifically a psychotherapy degree. It's 4 years and some practicums. But social workers and psychotherapists can provide therapy as well as a psychiatrist and a psychologist. But psychiatrists are harder to come by, just in that they spend a lot of time, I think, in hospitals or private practice, but they see a lot more clients. They're doing assessments on schizophrenia and all of those other things, where a social worker and a psychotherapist would not do those types of assessments.
Sonya, if there's someone watching our show live stream or on audio and they're looking to get a therapist, what are some key signs to finding a good therapist and getting the good fit for the client and the therapist?
Yeah, I would say doing some consults. So all therapists, I would hope and assume, do a consult. So getting on just online and doing a consultation to get a feel for the person. Sometimes, depending on their area of worry that they have, that they're going to, asking some specific questions around, do they have experience in dealing with that? So I know that I've had clients come to me that said, I was working with a therapist, but we came upon, I think that my partner is a narcissist and they don't have that area of expertise, which is why I'm coming to you. So a lot of, and I would say there's many therapists who are sort of, I'm going to say generic, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but people who will deal with anxiety, depression, sort of the whole gamut on a big level. And then you've got some therapists who are specialized in addictions, for example. You've got therapists who are trained in EMDR, which is, I'm going to butcher the name. It's eye movement. Okay, I'm not gonna butcher it. I can't remember, but it's about eye movement. It's a special type of therapy for trauma. And then there's CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is really about our thoughts and how they affect our feelings and our behaviors. So so maybe asking some questions around, what are the areas that you specialize in? What are some of the approaches that you use? And I find it helpful for clients. I share with them, I am much more involved. I'm going to give you strategies. I'm going to ask you to do a little bit of homework, because behavior changes help with changes. But we can't expect, we're not going to go from 0 to 100 within 3 sessions. So understanding, and the expectations have to be that when you're in therapy, it's not a one-off. And, I get clients who will come for a couple of sessions and then either it gets too heavy or money becomes an issue or so on. You can move the dial a little bit, but therapy takes time. And so understanding, what is it you want out of therapy? Do you want talk therapy, which is you sit and you talk to a therapist, you just vent basically, and the therapist listens and they empathize, and that's fine. And that works for some people because they desperately need that. I am much more sort of a strategic therapist in that I'm going to get involved in your progress. What do you want to talk about? What's your goals? And I always ask, what are your goals? And then we start working on those goals. And then we talk about, okay, I'm going to give you a couple of suggestions. I want you to go in and try them and then come back and tell me if that works or not. So I'm more directive, I'm going to say, in that I'm kind of hands-on. I'm an interventionist. If you want to see some change, then let's talk about some of the things you need to do. But again, the onus is on the client as much as it is on the therapist around, you've come, here's some things. Yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. But if you want to see some of this progress, let's try some things out. So asking sort of what people's approach is, I think, is really helpful. And how does that feel for you in terms of, do you feel comfortable? And, I have clients who say, I have a lovely therapist, but I don't feel like we moved anywhere. And so it was nice that I could go and talk to her, but she would just listen. And it's like, okay, well, you did talk therapy, and maybe it's times that you need to transition to something that's a little bit different. So sometimes it's like a good glove. You got to test it. And again, I appreciate people don't always have benefits and so on, but doing a consult can help you ask some of those questions around, do you understand childhood trauma? What's your approach? Just asking some basic questions, and a therapist can answer them.
Sonya, can you tell us a little bit more about Four Seasons Counseling? And also, are your sessions, are they all virtual, or do you do both virtual and in person?
Yeah, so Four Seasons Counseling is my company. I'm the CEO and one employee. And I do have a office site in Richmond Hill, Ontario. And then I also do virtual. And I do coaching sort of more, globally, if I can call it that. I have a couple of clients in the States that I work with and I coach. I can't do therapy because I have a therapy designation that is specific for Ontario. So licensing is also a big factor depending on which province you're in. You have to have a therapist in that province who is licensed to work in that province. So I'm licensed in the province of Ontario.
What's the process like in getting your license as a therapist in Ontario, in case somebody out there is looking to maybe pursue a career as a therapist?
Yeah, so the two that I talked about, social work, you can get your social work degree,
okay,
master's, and a psychotherapist, same thing. It's a master's in psychotherapy. Those are the two sort of streams. And then you just get licensed with the college. You have to fill out a whole bunch of forms, ask questions. Have you ever been charged with anything? Because if you've been charged with any criminal offense, you can't become a therapist. And so then you apply to the college and you get a license number. That license number is on all of the documentation for benefits purposes, as well as, if there's a complaint to the college, that's the number that gets used for any complaints. So we are accountable to a legislative body, just like a doctor would be, or a psychiatrist, or many of the other professions.
What was your motivation in starting up your own company, Four Seasons Counseling?
Yeah, I worked at a couple of organizations, sort of the 9 to 5, as a social worker. And I think after a number of years, I just felt that it was time. I think as you grow as a professional, you learn, you become more confident. And then you decide, I want to be able to have a flexible schedule. There was I had 2 kids. And so it kind of fit at a certain point of, it's just time to go out on my own and try different things and learn. I have kind of what I call a 5-year itch, is that after 5 years, I need to learn something new. So I need to challenge myself and move forward. So for me, I left that organization. I started my practice. I started into therapy. COVID hit and all of the chaos that went into that. And then I think probably, if I could probably time it, I started my podcast at the 5-year mark after that. And now I'm sort of launching into digital courses. I'm going to be doing a workshop on red flags, and then probably a big program just around self-worth and trying to recover from toxic relationships. And that'll probably come at the end of 2026. So I'm kind of ramping up into a new field and learning all about marketing.
Congratulations. And I'm learning about marketing too.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you this too, since I have you on the show. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but do you have any plans in the future for maybe a book, a self-help book?
Yeah, I've been toying with that for about 5 years. So I actually started to write one and then stopped, and I said, who would want to read that? You know, you go through these doubts of you compare yourself to other people who are successful. So I have thought about it. It's not on the front burner, it's on the back burner at this point. I think what will come is probably some kind of a workbook that I am going to be. I've started a small workbook that will be paired up with this, the red flag radar toolkit, basically, is what the workshop is called. And there will be a companion workbook. And from there, I think it will probably grow. And it's going to be really some tangible, strategic things that people can kind of take away, ask questions, fill out information, try behaviorally, because boundaries is a really big piece for most people, I think, let alone people who have been in relationships where they're been controlled. And so we have no boundaries when we've been controlled. And so when you are out of these relationships, we don't have a sense of our boundaries. So part of the components that I teach a lot of my clients and that'll be in this workshop is around how do we set boundaries, healthy boundaries, not people think of boundaries as saying no. It's not about saying no. It's about saying, what do I want to do? Do I want to do that? Do I not want to do that? And if I don't, how do I find a kind way of saying, catch me later, ask me next year, let me think about it. So how do we set boundaries and not offend people or feel guilty, but how do we do it because we need to do it? So those are all sort of elements that I want to put into a workbook so that people have something tangible that they can start to work on. And then they might go to a therapist and say, I've done this and I've started to have these aha moments and I really want to talk about this. And that might be a good leverage point, because for some people, the barrier of therapy is, I'm ashamed, I feel guilty, they're going to judge me, all of those things. And, by nature, I think most therapists are empaths and they're caring professionals, and they don't want to judge and they're not going to judge. They're going to ask you questions because it's really about, how do I help you get to be your best self? And so that's sometimes the stigma of therapy, is that we're talking about our childhood. Yeah, we are, because that's where it started. Our foundation started in childhood. What we learned in childhood, it now affects us into our adult life. And what we don't realize is what we learned in childhood, we don't need to carry all of it into adulthood. Some of it's just baggage. So working through that in therapy can get us to a place of, I've developed my own sense of identity. I have boundaries. I feel so much better about myself. And now I do things for myself where I did things for everybody else but me. So it's really about, how do you come into your own? How do you find who you can be happy with?
Sonya, how much have you evolved and improved as a therapist in 25 years? And how would you describe yourself as a therapist?
I've evolved so much in 25 years. I think that the first 5 years of any career is learning. And I was always when I started a new job, I would sit back and watch and learn. And then, it was confidence, especially when you're a green social worker and just out to save the world. And you learn by cutting your teeth on each job that you do. And I think 25 years in, I'm so much more confident. I'm so much more, I'm going to say real, grounded, in that, before you worked for an organization, you had to express the position of an organization. Now I express the position of me. Different therapists have different approaches. I'm one who does share some of my own journey because we're human. And I know that there are therapists who don't share anything and who will listen, and they may have experienced some of the same things that their clients are talking about, but they don't share that. And that's okay. Everybody has their own approach. But for me, it's really about, I'm human, you're human. And there are times where people tell me things that are really sad and overwhelming, and I tear up. And it's not out of, it doesn't make me any softer as a therapist. It makes me actually empathic. So we all have our own approaches, but it takes time to come into our own. and find that groove. And I found my groove, and I'm good at what I do. And so you asked me, what do I think about it myself as a therapist? I'm a much better therapist now than I was probably about 7 years ago, in that I'm so much more comfortable in my skin. I'm so much more comfortable in expressing things to people that sit across from me who are vulnerable and asking for help. And the one thing that I've learned is people need to be compassionate with themselves. They need to give themselves a break. They are their own worst critic. And so now one of the biggest pieces of advice that's free here is you got to stop being so tough on yourself. There's a lot of people who are tough on you. Why do you have to? So, yeah.
I can relate. And I wanted to ask you this too, these two terms that are used a lot of days, belittling and playing small.
Right. Yes. So belittling is about control and power. Somebody is belittling you. They are putting you down. It really is the robbing of your self-worth and of your identity. It's the, I am bigger than you and you are smaller. And playing small is what we do to ourselves. That is the, I don't want anybody to see me, or I'm not that important. And one of the biggest things is people have a hard time taking compliments from people. And that is when somebody says something kind to you, we don't receive it well because we don't resonate with it. It's, you told me that I'm beautiful. I don't believe I'm beautiful. So no, I can't accept that. I'm uncomfortable. And so the playing small is, I see myself as small. I don't see myself as valuable. I don't see myself as worthy. And so I'm going to not show up in any way that's going to call any attention to myself. I'll blend into the background kind of thing. So it's about the worth, right? It's our confidence and our esteem and how we see ourselves.
Who were some of your early influences and mentors when you first started going into therapy or being as a therapist?
Well, I think I started out in an organization, and I actually stumbled into social work because I worked at a camp. And the person who ran the camp was a social worker. And so she had a really big impact on me wanting to become a social worker. So I would say that's one. And the second would be my last year placement supervisor. She was like an incredibly giving, positive person who just saw the best in everybody. And so I would say those people are the two that are the biggest in terms of imprinting why I wanted to be a social worker and what kind of social worker I wanted to be. So it's really amazing how we can find mentors anywhere. And sometimes we don't even know that we've imprinted on somebody when we share and share ourselves, basically.
Now, being in media and radio, talking is huge, but listening, I think, is even more important. As for a good therapist, how important is listening skills?
Oh, it's huge. It's listening is not just hearing. It is being able to repeat that I heard you say this, and what do you mean by that? Let's elaborate. And I think that a lot of people don't listen, in that there's no follow-up question. There isn't the I heard you and I want to do something about it. So how do we deal with that? I heard you say in the last session, etc. It's the, how do I make sure that I am present with you? I've heard what you said. And so if, I have a client who says, I don't like loud noises, and I might be in an office building where there's a loud noise. I'm going to say, I remember that you don't like loud noises. And that's the listening part. As we integrate, we get to know a person, we remember things about them, and we're able to actually honor that in a session with them. That's truly listening to them. So, I think that there are times where I've had clients where I've said, in our last session or 2 sessions ago, you said this, and they go, oh my God, you were listening. It's like, yeah, I was listening. Because that's an important part of the work here, is that if we don't feel heard, how do we move forward? Because then we get stuck at I'm still not being heard. And I think for a lot of my clients who are in toxic relationships, they're not heard. And they keep talking and talking and trying, and they get beaten down and they're not heard. And what they're looking for is acknowledgement and validation. And that's not just with my clients. I think most people don't feel acknowledged and they don't feel validated. And they go looking for validation. And they might do that on social media by videotaping themselves all the time. They're looking for attention. Then the likes become a big thing. The follows become a big thing. Those are all forms of acknowledgement and validation that we're all seeking in some form. If we're not getting it in our primary relationships, we're seeking it out in the real world. So listening is really huge.
How competitive is the therapist industry nowadays?
Oh, really good question. I would say that the therapy, the mental health field is quite saturated with therapists at this point. That's my understanding from hearing many other therapists who are saying that a lot of new therapists have graduated, which is wonderful. There's many people who wanted to be in this field and who've come into the field. But there's still stigma to mental health. So I think clients I'm not sure how they're finding their therapists, because if you go on Psychology Today, which is the biggest place to find a therapist, there are thousands upon thousands of therapists. And again, it's a good thing, but I think that there are schools right now that are churning out therapists and there's not enough work. And I'm surprised to say that, because, years ago, there was a lot of clients looking for therapists and not necessarily accessible, especially in northern parts of the country or rural areas. But I think we're getting oversaturated.
Sonya, can you tell us a little bit about extensively working with clients who've experienced childhood trauma and toxic relationship recovery?
So childhood trauma, I would say, and I kind of said this to you earlier, is we've all experienced some kind of trauma. And trauma is big T or little t. So big T can be a car accident. It can be sexual abuse. It can be sort of those things that we can conjure up in our mind. But trauma can be being neglected by a parent. It can be parents divorcing. It can be a parent with addictions, a parent with mental health issues. So childhood trauma is, I think most of us could probably share stories of things that have happened in our childhood that imprinted on us, that caused us stress or harm. And so it's quite pervasive. We all carry it with us. The challenge is that as you become an adult, how does that play out in other relationships? And so what we lack in sometimes our childhood experiences, we seek out in our adult relationships. So if we had a parent who was addicted to alcohol or drugs, we become a people pleaser because we end up looking after that parent because we have no choice. We develop, as kids, we're resilient. We develop these adaptive qualities to survive. And so we become then a caretaker, is that I'm used to looking after somebody and enabling somebody in whatever way I can. As a child, we don't know that we're enabling, we are. And then we enable in an adult relationship. And unfortunately, when we've come from disadvantaged childhoods, we're more susceptible to be in toxic relationships. And, defining toxicity, I think everybody can probably define it differently. But for me, toxic is being controlled. And that is that you are not allowed to have your own identity. And I will make the decisions. I will do the things as the toxic person. And the other person goes along with that. Because again, they're looking for love, unconditional love. They're looking for validation. They're looking for acknowledgement. And they've been taught to care for people. So you've had people pleasers who are highly empathic, who have learned that this is their way of staying safe in environments, especially from childhoods that were dangerous. And they become people pleasers, and they please and they please, and they have so much empathy. But at some point, they don't know that they should get out of some of these relationships that are dangerous. To give and give and give, we think that means to be safe, but it doesn't. It just means that we harm ourselves even more. So toxicity can take different forms, but at some point, the opposite of toxicity for me is your sense of identity and your own sense of control in your own life, that you can make decisions for yourself and that you are allowed to, if I can say it that way. But it's the ability to make your own decisions and feel free to do that, as opposed to being controlled.
Sonya, I had some childhood trauma. Now I'm on a platform. I'm more comfortable sharing it, but for many years I kept it to myself. Monday, December 23rd, 1985, my dad passed away at home from an asthma attack, and it was I was 13 at the time, and I took it hard because that night he asked me to do something. And being a 13-year-old teenage kid playing hockey, and then Monday Night Football was on, he ended up doing some snow shoveling. He had asthma to begin with, and unfortunately, he had a bad asthma attack. And before the paramedics could get there, he passed away. And I'll be honest, for 2, 3 years, I was going to therapy. I blamed myself, and I know it's been 40 years since then, but you never get over something like that. You never forget something like that. And that's why I like
Mhm.
this show, because I feel like
Mhm.
I can open up more about this than I
Yep.
did for many years. I kind of just kept it to myself.
Yeah, it's guilt, it's shame, it's regret, all of those things that we carry with us in childhood and to adult life. I mean, we are our own worst enemy, right? We harm ourselves in a lot of ways, and we need somebody else to help us to lift some of that burden, and that's what a therapist should do.
Now, you said people pleaser, and that's something I have been most of my life. What are
Mhm.
some tips to getting out of that mindset for somebody that's a
That's a
people
journey.
pleaser?
That's a journey. It's not a one or two
Okay.
strategy. It really is. We have to learn that by people pleasing, we choose what I call the other effect. We give to other. We are doing for other all the time, and what we do is we forget about ourselves. And so the people pleasing, sort of we've got to turn it the other way a little bit. We've got to say, as much as I want to do this thing for you, the silly example I give is, the school asks you to bake 200 cupcakes the night before because there's a big event and the baker fell through. I used to be the person, yeah, I'll do it. Okay. And I would stay up all night and I would bake the cupcakes. That's the people pleasing. I want to be liked by people. I don't want people to think that I wouldn't be helpful. All of these fears we have about what people think of us. But at the end of the day, it's, do I want to stay up for the whole night and bake cupcakes? No, I don't want to, but I do it. And so what we end up doing as people pleasers is that we give so much of ourselves, and what we hope and almost expect is that we will get it back. And when it doesn't come back, we feel resent. It's a quiet resent. We don't say anything, but we resent. And so part of that resentment we have to take responsibility for. It's that I keep giving, and I give to people who don't give back to me. And so at some point in our logical adult brain, we have to say, I can't be with this person because they are a taker. And sure, it suits me to keep giving, but at some point you hit a wall. And so we have to start learning I've got to pull this back a little bit. Yes, I can be helpful. Yes, I can offer to do certain things, but I'm not going to do 100 cupcakes or 200 cupcakes. I might be able to go and pick up some cupcakes tomorrow morning at the bakery down the street and drop them off. Like, we can negotiate what we can do and what we can't do. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. But as people pleasers, our default is, yes, I will do. And we have to learn to scale that back, and we have to be choosy. Do I want to do this? Yeah, I do want to do it. Okay, I'm going to do it. Do I want to do this? No, I don't want to do this. Okay, how do I manage the guilt that comes up? Because I want to say no, but oh my God, people are going to think this of me. People are going to say that about me. And being able to say, well, who are these people, right? Like, we have this vision of people are not going to like us. Well, people are all struggling with their own issues. They're not necessarily thinking about that. They might think for a minute, oh, it's too bad Sonya wasn't able to get those cupcakes. They're not saying, Sonya, that SOB. They're just saying it's too bad you couldn't. But we are harder on ourselves than anybody else. So we've got to rein it in for ourselves. We've got to say, I can be helpful at times, but I also have to honor what's important for me. And so instead of the other, it has to be the me. And sometimes people feel selfish when they think about the me, because they've been taught, you're thinking about yourself all the time. You're selfish. You're this and that. We're not selfish. We all have to survive, and that means we have to take care of ourselves.
And sometimes you have to say no.
Absolutely.
It's okay to say no occasionally.
Absolutely. Yeah, but you have to manage the guilt that comes up from that, right? And that's part of what therapy is how do we manage this guilt? We can say, I see you, guilt, but I'm putting you here. I'm not going to let guilt dictate my behavior. I'm going to say, yes, I know I feel the guilt, but I'll manage it, because I can't let it run my life. Because a lot of people live their lives through guilt and shame.
I can relate. It's like
Yeah.
the other day when I mentioned off air that I was in a little minor accident the other day on my way to Cambridge to do volunteer work. I ended up going back home and I called them and I felt bad. I was apologizing, say, "Hey, I feel like I've let the dogs down not coming in." They're
Yeah.
like, they were completely understanding and stuff like that, but I had guilt
Guilt.
feeling that I let the dogs down because I didn't come in
Yeah.
and walk the dogs today. I really, and that's something I need to work on.
And that the antidote, the quick magic fix, very hard to do, is compassion. It's self-compassion. It's, I didn't do it intentionally. I didn't do it willfully. I genuinely had something that happened that was out of my control. So I'm going
Control
to let myself off the hook, right? Compassion. But we have compassion for everybody else. We don't have it for ourselves.
starts with yourself. Honestly,
Absolutely.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, Sonia, you still good for time? Because I've got a few more questions I'd
I
like to
do.
ask you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I know you deal with toxic relationships. What are some of the main causes for a toxic relationship these days?
Whew. Um, I would say, and I'm going to generalize to some extent, but insecurity. I think that when we grow up being insecure and we end up in relationships where we feel we can exert some control, power and control are two of the biggest things that create toxicity. Now, they're not the only things. There's addictions, there's mental health concerns that create these sort of codependent type of relationships, right? If you're with a partner who has struggles with mental health, but is ruining your life in a variety of ways, we stay though because we feel guilt. And so what we end up doing is making ourselves small, as you kind of as we talked about earlier. We stay in these relationships out of obligation, out of our value, out of our commitment, all of those things which are all honorable at the time. Nobody goes into a marriage thinking that they're going to divorce, for example. But being in toxic relationships where you get belittled, where you get bullied, where you get put down, and that can happen not just in a marital relationship. Obviously, it's parent relationships, it's sibling relationships, it's work relationships. If there's power dynamics, there is the I have to put up and shut up in this relationship because I can't afford to lose my job. And so I've got a coworker or a boss or somebody who's treating me badly. It's a toxic relationship. There's a sense of I'm going to put you down, demean you, put you on the defensive, gaslight you, all of those things. Those are all, forms of a toxic relationship where there is the two people in a relationship should not intentionally want to hurt each other or put each other down or demean each other. And those relationships become toxic. Some of them are physical relationships, right? That end up in two people fighting, physically fighting. Sometimes it's one person who's exerting control and is being abusive. Those are the sort of common ones, but emotional abuse is so unseen. It happens behind closed doors. It's not recognized in the courts. Even children are emotionally abused by their parents. That's not recognized in it's recognized. It's very hard to prove emotional abuse of a child. So emotional abuse is one of and it's a component in most other relationships, emotional. And so those are the dynamics that lead to that toxicity of, I feel I'm being targeted, I'm being harmed, my guilt is being triggered. There's no sense of empathy. I don't feel heard by this person, even though I'm explaining. I don't get an apology or acknowledgement from the other person if they've done something to me. Those are all things that put us in this place of feeling little. And we feel stuck a lot
They
of the time.
basically want to keep you shrunk.
Yeah. Yep. And stuck. It serves some people's purpose.
Now, as a therapist, obviously there's a lot of men that do that, but do you find there's more and more women that are doing it as well?
I suspect there is 100%. I think that society makes it difficult for men to disclose that kind of abuse. And so it's probably quite underreported. And I would say emotional abuse, absolutely. I think men and women just as equally can be abusive, can be controlling, can be demeaning, all of those things. So I think that, gender wise, I think the stereotype is that men they're the stronger species, generally speaking. That's how we're built. But I think that anybody is capable of emotional abuse.
how difficult is it for people to escape a toxic relationship, and how much can it impact children and their mental health as well?
Yeah, wow, big question. um, it's very difficult to leave a toxic relationship. I think that, and as I've done couples counseling, what I have found is that they usually come to my doorstep when they are one person's got their foot out the door almost, and they're coming as this last ditch effort. And what happens is that often you've got, and men and women communicate very differently. So for women, they're talking about it throughout the marriage. I'm not happy. You don't do this with me. We used to do this and now this. You don't help around the house. All of those things. They're ways that a woman is expressing themselves and saying, I need help. You're not here. You're at work all the time. I miss you. And so a woman is expressing that. And for men who are much more literal communicators, they're not hearing that in the way that it's intended. And so 10 years goes by and the woman says, I'm done. They still love their partner, or they desperately want to save the relationship, but they're emotionally done. And then you've got the husband who's in a panic, who says, I didn't know. I didn't know our marriage was in trouble. I want to save this marriage. And so you've got people who are two very different stages. And then as you kind of unearth things, you've got one partner who's actually been emotionally not available, toxic in some senses, who's controlling, who said, I don't know what the problem is. I gave you everything. I gave you a house, gave you kids, gave you cars, et cetera, et cetera. And you've got the other partner saying, but that's all that's important here. And so leaving any relationship, I think, is difficult. People don't take lightly separating from a partner or divorcing from a partner. That in and of itself is difficult. When you've got toxic relationships, you've got fear. You've got fear of being physically harmed, fear of the children being turned against you, fear of a court battle, a high conflict court battle, where because both parties are hurt, then they're in court for 5 years. I also do a lot of work in separation, divorce, and high conflict, and it gets ugly. So it's not easy to leave, not even just financially, for so many other reasons. And then you've got the children who are in the middle of that, who are observing the conflict, whether it is out loud or whether they're watching mom and dad not talking to each other, or the silent treatment or whatever else. And then you've got children who become depressed, children who start fighting on the school playground because they don't know how to get their anger out. They get sad and they start to become anxious in social environments. Again, they may not know what's happening in their nervous system, but there's cortisol in their system. They are anxious. And so children, as much as we like to think that they're in their room and they didn't hear it, and you have a lot of people who say that. I know when I was a kid, if my parents were yelling, my ear was at the door. I was listening to say, is everything okay? We underestimate what children actually understand, hear, see, and know. We think we're doing well, but we're not. So children they're the vulnerable victims, and adult survivors of childhood trauma can tell you what they witnessed in their childhood. And we somehow think that they're not hearing and not seeing it now, and then they're not impacted. They're doing badly in school, and we're thinking it's a intellect issue. But meanwhile, there's something going on at home.
In your opinion, I know when I was a kid, I wasn't exposed to adult issues. There's certain things that was between my mom and my dad. Do you find it has changed nowadays with parenting in 2025?
Yes, I find that, and again, it's not across the board. I think that there are some families who do this really well, and then there are many families who don't. I think that parents sometimes will make an offhanded comment in front of the children. Sometimes they forget the children are there, or sometimes they say, you see, Jimmy, Dad's doing it again. It's how do we end up pulling kids into these things, and you're trying to ask Jimmy to pick sides, and the child's saying, like, I don't want to be in the middle of this. But then they have to figure out who's the parent that I need to feel the most worried about, and then I need to be safe with. And so the misnomer is that children will pick the parent that they love the most or whatever. It's mostly that the children will go to the one that they fear the most, because that's the one they have to please to not get into trouble. And so there's a misnomer about why a child goes to one parent over the other. And they love both parents. It's instinctually baked into our DNA that we are wired to connect to our parents. We will not leave our parents, even if they abuse us. I've worked in systems where children have been abused by their parents, and when they are 18 and out of the system, they go back to that abusive parent. There's a connection there that they always want.
Sonya, as we wrap up the show in a few minutes, can you just tell us a little bit about some of the techniques you use in helping your clients, like cognitive behavioral therapy, or known as CBT, family systems therapy, as well as the attachment theory?
Yeah. So I use most of these in my day-to-day. I think clients say, what approach do you use? And those are clients who've been to therapists. So it's kind of interesting when I hear that. So CBT is really about our thought process and how our thoughts impact our behavior and our feelings. So I usually pepper that in everywhere. When I'm challenging somebody's thought, I'm asking, why do you think that? Is that a belief? Is it an assumption? Is it a fear? And how do we correct that? How do we come back into our logical brain, and how do we sort through information as opposed to emotionally? Because what our thoughts do, our thoughts have such great power. And if we believe we're not good enough, then our behavior and our feelings are impacted by that. And so it's like a triangle. They're all connected. One affects the other. You change one in the triangle and the other two will change as well. We can change the thought, we can change the behavior, and we can change the feeling. We can change the feeling, we can change the thought, and we can change the behavior. Sorry, it's all confusing, but so it's about the thoughts. Is we need to get people to think in the real world as opposed to in the fear. And then attachment theory is, I'm a big proponent of attachment theory. We all have different attachment styles, which are born in childhood, which is you're securely attached as you've had unconditional love. You've had all of your needs met in most ways, not perfect, but in most ways that you're secure. When we've got into anxious and avoidant and disorganized, those are the other three. Anxious are those people who are constantly wanting to feel connection to somebody. They're fearing abandonment. And so they always, I have a lot of women who come to me. So women who are anxious, who are saying, I haven't heard from my boyfriend in a day. I've called him 5 times. I've texted him. I'm driving by his house now. That is the escalation of, I am fearing you're going to leave me. So I need to connect back with you. That's the anxiousness. Avoidance are, I'm pretty self-sufficient. I'm independent. I don't really need you. I'll call you when I'm ready. There's this lack of emotional connection in the same way, because they have learned I can rely on myself. I don't want to depend on anybody too much. And so I am going to try and be as independent as I can. Unfortunately, anxious and avoidance usually pair up fairly quickly. They both meet a need for each other, but it's also a very tense. And then disorganized is anxious and avoidant. They flip between the two depending on the relationships that they're in. And family systems is really about how do we work within the family system? What are the relationships like with each of one of our parents, of our siblings? And how do we work together to try and sort out the relationships? It's much more extensive than that. But I use all three. I use other sort of approaches as well. It's just based on what the client brings to me in terms of what their goals are and how we can figure it out.
Sonya, thank you for explaining that. And as we wrap this show up, do I have 2-3 minutes to play one of your YouTube clips? And how can people subscribe to your YouTube channel? Is it 4 Seasons Counseling YouTube channel?
That's correct.
Okay, and I've already subscribed, and I'm just going to play a little clip here. Just let me know if you can hear it. It's I'm going to play the clip right now. Just 1 second. It's called "I Spent Years with a Narcissist. Here's what I learned about blame shifting," which I'll ask you a little more as we wrap up this show. 1 second.
Yeah.
Hi, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Sonya Gandhi, and I'm a therapist and a survivor of narcissistic abuse. And today we're talking about a deeply harmful manipulation tactic used by narcissists: blaming and deflection. Narcissists are masters at avoiding accountability, and one way they do this is by making you feel like you're the cause of their bad behavior. It's a tactic that keeps you confused, off balance, and emotionally drained. In this video, we're going to explore how blaming and deflection work, why narcissists use it, and most importantly, how you can recognize and protect yourself from it. So let's get into it. Blaming and deflection are manipulative tactics narcissists use to avoid taking responsibility for their actions. Instead of owning up to their behavior, they shift the blame onto you. Sound familiar? It sounds like this. I only yelled because you pushed my buttons, or you're the one making this relationship difficult. By deflecting the issue onto you, the narcissist avoids that accountability while making you question whether you're actually the problem. In these situations, your feelings, your behavior, or even your very presence are twisted to seem like the root cause of the issue. You might start believing that if you just acted differently, the problems would disappear. But in reality, no matter how much you change or adapt, the narcissist will always find a way to make you feel responsible for their behavior. This constant shifting of blame keeps you caught in the cycle of self-doubt and guilt, making it harder to recognize the narcissist's manipulation. Let's dive a little deeper into how blaming and deflection work. It's a subtle yet powerful form of emotional manipulation. Here's some common examples of how this tactic plays out in relationships. One way narcissists deflect blame is by making you responsible for their reactions. For example, they might say, I wouldn't have yelled at you if you didn't keep pushing my buttons. What they're doing here is turning their inappropriate reaction into your fault. Instead of taking responsibility for their outbursts, they make it seem like your actions caused their reaction. Another example is when the narcissist blames you for their unhappiness. They'll say something like, if you weren't so difficult, I wouldn't be so stressed all the time. This tactic makes you feel responsible for their emotions, even though their stress has little to do with your actions. They also love to deflect from criticism. Let's say you bring up something that they did that hurt you. And instead of addressing it, they respond with, well, what about that time you made me feel like this? This is classic deflection. They change the subject to an unrelated incident to avoid talking about the real issue that's at hand in the moment. Another common tactic is blaming you for being too sensitive. And I mentioned this in another video, that my father would say that I was too sensitive, and I believed him. And that created so much doubt in me that I wouldn't bring up things unless I absolutely had to, which then he won because he wanted to control the narrative. When they've said or done something harmful and you express how it made you feel, they'll respond with, you're too sensitive. It's not my.
Thank you so much, Sonya, for letting me play a little bit of the clip from your YouTube channel, Four Seasons Counseling YouTube channel. I've already subscribed. Just thoughts on that video.
Wow. First of all, it's hard to watch yourself. Secondly, I would say it's projection, really. It's what we talked about earlier is that when you're in these types of relationships, the other person doesn't take responsibility for their actions, and they actually then throw it back to you. And that's their way of managing what you may have created in them, which might be shame or this defensiveness. And because they can't manage it, they project it back and it becomes your fault. So that's the deflection of the projection that happens. Not uncommon, but as highly empathic people, we take it, we believe it to be true, and it's not true. And that's the part of that, the category of gaslighting, is we're made to believe things that aren't actually true. And we take responsibility for those things. And then we really doubt ourselves, right? We go through life thinking we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're too sensitive. I hearing that all the time used to be so frustrating for me. And I thought, oh my God, I'm too sensitive. And it wasn't that I was too sensitive. It was just that I had normal emotions, but a narcissist doesn't have access to the same emotions as an empath does, or as normal people, as I would say. They've cut off their emotions. And so when you react to something they say, they can't manage it and then they throw it back. So it's sort of like a tennis game, they just throw it back. So it's difficult for the person who's experiencing it.
How satisfying is it being able to help people as a therapist and seeing people over time kind of change their mindset?
Oh, huge, huge. I've got a couple of clients who, and one of them is on the podcast from last year around childhood rules. I've been working with her for about 2.5 years now, ongoing, and she has made some huge strides in terms of where she's at. She was married to a narcissist and divorced, or sorry, separated, going through a legal battle, but has come so far with her self-esteem. And we drew, it led back to her childhood in terms of she had parents who were emotionally neglectful, and she believed that she was not good enough. And it's basically, she talks about 10 rules that she subconsciously believed that she had to follow, and how she has now unraveled those. So now she will have this gut feeling. It will come up. She can link it to, oh, it's this rule that I broke. And that's why I'm feeling this anxiety right now. And I have to manage this. And so we've worked through a lot together over 2.5 years, and she is in a very different place. So, I mean, she did the work. I don't take credit for it. I was certainly just a guide for her. I've got a couple of clients who does leaps and bounds in terms of their self-esteem, their self-worth, their sense of boundaries, their ability to say, I pick me. I manage the guilt and I still pick me. And it feels like such a relief at times that I can do something that I enjoy, as opposed to what I used to have to do is what everybody else wanted me to do. So it's huge. It's why I do the work.
As we wrap up this show, Sonya, I do this with all my guests. What are some fun facts or a fun fact about yourself?
Wow, I did not prepare for this. A fun fact about me.
Or even the therapy industry.
I don't think I have a fun fact about therapy. Fun fact, I think, is that I love dogs. And oh yes, I can. Yeah. My dream, and I tease my daughters about this, is that I want to move on to a farm and have a dog farm, because I want to save all of the dogs, because they don't have a voice like the clients that I work with. I just want to save all the animals. So my daughters joke with me about, yeah, you're going to have a dog farm. Yeah. So that's a fun fact about me.
Do you have a favorite breed, or you just love little dogs?
No, we've had collies over the years. They're just so intelligent. But right now I've got a mixed golden retriever Great Pyrenees. She's a huge dog. So she's 110 pounds. And sheds like crazy. And then I've got a mixed breed mutt who is black lab, and I'm not really sure what the other part of her is, but she's as anxious as all heck. So they're both beautiful dogs and great companions, and they love you unconditionally.
I want to give a shout out to the Cambridge District Humane Society, where I volunteer twice a week as a dog walker, and I do fundraising for them as well. And dogs have been a big part of my life. The hard part is that when it's the end of their life, or a cat or a pet, it's emotionally hard. It's like it's a family member you're losing, really. Their lives are not long enough, in my opinion.
Agreed. They're angels.
And finally, ask the host CDP a question as we wrap this up. Do you have a question to put me on the hot seat as we wrap this up? And I'm making you laugh. That's good. That's good.
I was going to say, tell me about your childhood trauma, but you did share a little bit about your childhood trauma.
Yeah. Yes.
And I guess, my question to you, put you on the spot, is, and you did talk about going to therapy. Do you support therapy? Do you think there's value to therapy?
Absolutely. And sometimes you need an outside person's perspective. Venting to your family and friends, they're not always going to be, it's not the same. And I just think somebody who's an outside your inner circle, I'm completely for it. And there's this social taboo. If you go to a therapist or a psychiatrist, you're crazy, is nonsense. It's the people who refuse to go are the ones that have the issues, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Self-awareness is a really big part of being human.
100%. And finally, Sonya. Where can our audience again follow you on social media platforms, your website, and the best way of contacting you and your next episode of When Rose-Colored Glasses Come Off?
Yeah, so I'm taping that this week. It's all ready to go. It'll be I post on Sunday nights. So that's probably one of the place that I'm the most consistent, I'm going to say, is When the Rose-Colored Glasses Come Off, which is on most podcast sites, is a good place to find me. Or Four Seasons Counseling is my website that you can find me at. And socials, Four Season Counseling is the handle. And you can find me at any of those. And stay tuned, because I've got some new and exciting digital stuff, workbook, a workshop coming up February 15th, and then launching into a big program around self-worth and confidence at the end of this 2026.
I have all your social media sites and your website and LinkedIn page on the graphics down here below too.
Great. Awesome.
I want to say, Sonya, thank you so much for giving us 70 minutes of your time today. I apologize for keeping you over 60 minutes, but when you're having a good conversation, time flies by quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. It was wonderful to share.
Well, thank you. Continued success as a therapist and helping people, and also as a podcast. And I will subscribe to your podcast show, and I will comment on your next episode. And I want to wish you and your family and your two dogs a happy New Year, happy holidays. And you have an open invite to come back on the show again in the future. And if you can give me a little bit of time tonight, I will send you the video, the audio, and some reels and clips if you'd like to tag this. And any feedback would be greatly appreciated, because the only way you get better as a professional in any career is get some feedback, and then you just kind of work on the feedback and try to keep improving going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year, and thank you so much, Sonya, and spoil those dogs for me too. Give them treats and pet for me. Thank you so much, Sonya.
Bye.
Bye. All right, everybody, that wraps up season 12, episode 35, overall 640 of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, brought to you by barrycullen.com. I want to say thank you to my guest, Sonya Gandhi, a therapist and podcast host of When Roses Colored Glasses Come Off. That's the name of her podcast show, and her company is called Four Seasons Counseling as well. And her website and her social media sites are down here as well. And I have another announcement to make, guys, as we wrap up the show. The next Live with CDP Talk Show, brought to you by barrycullen.com, is going to take place on Wednesday, December 31st, 3 p.m. Eastern, with special guest Huneda Balsfar. She is an author, certified grief recovery, and integrative health coach. So we're going to talk to Huneda a little bit about her book and being a certified grief recovering and integrative health coach as well. And she likes dogs as well. And she is from out in British Columbia as well. So check out Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, Wednesday, December 31st, tomorrow at 3 p.m. with my special guest, Huneda Balsfar, an author and certified grief recovery and integrative health coach as well. And as we wrap up this show, guys, like I do with every show, one moment right here, I have a lot of ticker stuff going on right now. Right now, Barry Cullen Chevrolet dealership is your go-to service center this winter. That's right, a no charge 12-volt battery test, plus you can receive a $20 instant rebate if you need a new battery, located at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. So with winter here, the extreme cold temperatures can kill your batteries. Check out Barry Cullen Chevrolet Service Department for a free, that's right, a free no charge 12-volt battery test. Plus you can receive a $20 instant rebate if you need a new battery, located at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. And again, Barry Cullen Chevrolet is the proud sponsor and advertiser here on Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. Speaking of advertising, if you'd like to advertise your business on my platform, Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, hosted by Chris Palme. You can email me at cpalme19@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you or working with you. My prices are reasonable and fair, and this show is on 21 different platforms. I have almost 600,000 views on my YouTube channel and over 10,000 downloads and listens on Spotify as well. So if you want to make your company a little more visible, check out CDP Media Productions, Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, hosted by Chris Palme. If you would like to advertise your business on this talk show platform, which is on both video and audio platforms. As we wrap up this show, guys, with the new year coming, the holiday season still here, what a better way than to give yourself a gift with a personalized video message from yours truly. Cameo.com. Type in Chris Palme. I do Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday, congratulations. If you want to talk to me about my talk show, some of my favorite guests, favorite interviews, or being on WQEE 99.1 FM in Georgia for 2 years as well, or some of my freelance media coverage I've done with a number of professional sports teams, book at cameo.com/Chris Palme. Look forward to doing your request very soon. You can also follow me on Blue Sky Social, which is like Twitter used to be, at Live with CDP19 on Blue Sky Social. Cambridge District Humane Society, if you're looking to adopt a pet, located at 1650 Dunbar Road in Cambridge, Ontario. Telephone number 519-623-7722, extension 0, or visit their website, cambridgehumanesociety.org. All the animals that are up for adoption, their profiles are on cambridgehumanesociety.org. And if you have pet food, cat litter, dog and cat treats, paper towels, garbage bags, please bring them into the shelter or check out their Amazon wish list on cambridgehumanesociety.org. They also are still selling calendars, 2026 Cambridge District Humane Society calendars for $10, and the money goes to the programs at the Cambridge District Humane Society. And again, I want to say thank you to 40 people who bought the calendars for me, and I was able to raise $400 for the Cambridge District Humane Society. So always remember to adopt, don't shop, and remember you can't buy happiness, but you can adopt it at the Cambridge District Humane Society. As we wrap up this show, guys, Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, again, is live streamed on these platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, X, Twitch, LinkedIn, and now available on Instagram. And fingers crossed, I will have this show on TikTok at some point for my 7th platform as well. You can follow up my website on beacons.ai/Chris D. Palme. Again, Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show is brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership, located at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. You can check out their website, barrycullen.com. You can also follow this content creator. Yes, I'm on TikTok, Chris Palme. Go to TikTok at Chris Palme. Make sure you follow, like, and share. I post a lot of content there as well. And I want to say thank you to my almost 1,500 followers on TikTok. So make sure you look for me, Chris Palme, on TikTok. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. If you're into webinars, podcasting, check out StreamYard.com. They have basic free plans, paid professional plans, or if you're a business that does a lot of webinars, live streaming, go to StreamYard.com and contact their sales department for pricing as well. And yours truly has been with StreamYard now for 5 years, and I give them a big thumbs up. Finally, guys, Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show. The audio version is on these platforms: iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify for podcasters, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Pandora, Tuned In, YouTube Music, Good Pods. And remember to like, subscribe, and share. And I want to say thank you to 70 countries around the world for listening to the show on my audio platforms. And I've also reached over 10,000 listens and downloads on Spotify. So thank you so much for supporting this show as well. And you can email live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show at cpame19@gmail.com. Any comments, questions, suggestions, feedback would be greatly appreciated. And if you'd like to tip the host, you like my YouTube channel, you like my talk shows, I am on PayPal at Chris Pame on PayPal if you'd like to contribute to this media work. And again, you can reach me at cpame19@gmail.com and either contribute through PayPal or book a personalized video through cameo.com/Chris Pame. Finally, guys, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, X, Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, everywhere on social media except Snapchat. And remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Chris Pame Live with CDP Talk Show. Please subscribe, like, and share there as well. And I'm fast approaching 600,000 views, 600,000 views. So thank you so much for watching my YouTube channel and my YouTube shorts as well. And that is about it, guys. We're going to wrap up this show. And the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Bills 13-12 at Highmark Stadium. And once again, Jalen Hurts gets a W over Josh Allen. And the Eagles are now 11-5 and will wrap up the regular season this Sunday at 4:25 at Lincoln Financial Field against the Washington Commanders. And I'll tell you this, there was some missed calls there against the Eagles on Sunday, but the Eagles won the game. The defense was great. They get an A. The special teams, Brandon Mann, the punter, and Jake Elliott were great as well. The offense wasn't so good in the second half, but the Eagles' defense and special teams won that game. So it was nice for the Eagles to put a nail in the Bills' AFC East hopes, which now the Patriots have won the division title, and the Bills are now the 7th seed in the AFC playoffs. So it was kind of nice to stick a little nail in the coffin of Bills Mafia with that win on Sunday. It wasn't pretty, but it's better to win ugly than to lose pretty, like the LA Rams did last night, losing 27-24 to Atlanta as well. And the Detroit Pistons are back in action tonight on NBC Peacock, taking on the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James at 10 o'clock. The Pistons are on a 2-game losing streak and are now 24-8. So hopefully they can get a win tonight against LeBron James and those Los Angeles Lakers from the Crypto Center in Los Angeles. And again, I want to say thank you so much to my guest tonight, Sonya Gandhi, a therapist and a podcast host, for coming on here tonight. And look forward to my show tomorrow, Wednesday, December 31st, 3 p.m. Eastern, with special guest Huneda Bellas-Fars. Yeah, Huneda Bellas-Far, an author and certified grief recovery health coach, will be on our show. And then Saturday, January 3rd, 6 p.m. Eastern, I have WWE superfan Nikki Whitehorse coming on to tell us a little bit about the latest in the world of the WWE and what's going on with champions Cody Rhodes and CM Punk as well. So Nikki Whitehorse will be back for her 3rd appearance on Saturday, January 3rd at 6 p.m. Eastern. I hope everybody has a great night, and thank you to everyone for watching this live stream on my audio platforms, and to Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership for being a sponsor and advertiser of this show as well. I hope everybody has a great night. In case some of you guys are not able to watch my show tomorrow at 3 p.m., I want to wish everybody Happy New Year 2026 coming up, and happy holidays. And again, thank you to everyone for watching and listening to Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, hosted by yours truly, Chris Pame. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow here at 3 p.m. for another edition of Live with CDP Sports and Entertainment Talk Show, brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership here in Guelph. Good night, everybody.